Hello and welcome to today's video. Today, I'm going to tell you 5 things that your gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you. And you're going to want to stick around for the full video because number 5 is so interesting. Honestly, I've put about 200 hours of research into this in the last couple of months, and you really don't want to miss this point. It's fascinating. So let's get started at the top. And this one actually comes with a small personal anecdote from an experience in my life. So the first thing a gastroenterologist won't tell you is how important the foods you are eating are to the health of your gut. Now, I know this sounds insane. It sounds crazy, but hear me out. I've got this story for you. My brother, unfortunately, has Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. These are probably like level 10 severity digestive issues. And I can remember one of the first things that his gastroenterologist told him was the food that you eat doesn't matter. It has no impact on your condition. And now, I'm not like a rocket scientist or I'm not a gastroenterologist, but I really don't think you need to have a PhD in logic to understand that the food that you eat directly influences the health of your digestive system. And I'm sure if you're watching this video and you've probably got some gut problems, you've also probably come to this conclusion that the food that you eat directly influences the health of your gut. And well, why the hell wouldn't it? You know, it makes complete, perfect, logical sense. But I really want to put a little emphasis on just how important it is. And it doesn't mean that you have to restrict all of the food groups. It doesn't mean that carbs are evil or that you can't eat histamine or oxalate foods. The key is really understanding that if you can't digest it, it's not good for you. That's the key. And I think the reason that this doesn't get enough attention is that it's such an individualized thing. It's always so personalized to the individual. It's really hard because people like blanket statements. People are drawn towards polarizing comments like everybody should eat the carnivore diet. The carnivore diet is the best diet for gut health. And that just simply isn't true because broad blanket statements like that, they don't work. And when you're looking at the gut, one of the most intricate and sensitive and personal parts, everyone has a different microbiome. We have different genetics. The gut is so unique. The thought that there's going to be a one-size-fits-all diet just simply doesn't make any sense. So take this key principle away from the video today. If you can't eat it, if you can't digest it, it's not good for you. That's the statement I want to be kind of echoing around in your mind. I want you to just be thinking over and over again. If I can't digest it, it's not good for me. But the inverse is true. If you can digest it, it is good for you. Right now, I can eat gluten. I can digest it completely fine. And it's perfectly fine for me. And I'm using gluten here as the example because this is the thing that everybody that looks at gut health tells you you cannot eat, you should not eat. I've even had people tell me, and I cannot believe this, I've had people tell me that because I eat gluten, I don't deserve to heal. Like, can you imagine how crazy a statement like that is? So it's really the key. You have to listen to your body. You have to understand that if you can digest it and break it down and absorb it, it can be a healthful food for you. But if you cannot digest it, if you cannot break it down, if you cannot absorb it, not only is it not doing anything beneficial for you, but it's actually creating a lot of problems. It's feeding dysbiosis in your intestine. It's creating inflammation. It's increasing intestinal permeability, and it's putting a lot of extra work on your immune system. So you literally gain nothing from eating foods that you cannot digest correctly. And not only do you not gain anything, they actually hurt you. So it's really important if you can't digest a food that you don't consume it. But if you can digest a food, there is no benefit. There is no logic to avoiding it. Now, the second thing that a gastroenterologist won't tell you is about leaky gut. Leaky gut is kind of like a commonplace term for an actual medical condition called gastrointestinal hyperpermeability. This is a real thing. This is science. Thing is, science takes 15 to 20 years to catch up with the bleeding edge of research. So this is beginning to be acknowledged now, but we've known about leaky gut for like 10, 15, 20 years. And it's going to start playing a more important part in the way that gastroenterologists work. I'm sure of it. Give it another 10 years and you'll start see them talking about it. But right now, they're not going to tell you about this. And understanding what leaky gut is and how it works is like this cheat code. It's this secret that helps you understand how your gut can be connected to almost every non-infectious health condition that you can get. It is unbelievable. Now, everybody has differences in their gut flora and in their genes. And because of all of these different personalizations and individualizations, when leaky gut is causing a problem, it creates a different problem for each person. But there are a couple of situations where there are very strong links between leaky gut, gastrointestinal hyperpermeability, and certain conditions inside of the body. And your gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you about any of these things. And it's not because he doesn't want to tell you, it's because they don't know. They just simply don't know this yet. It isn't considered concrete science. It's not medical science yet. But that doesn't mean it isn't true. And it doesn't mean it isn't going to be medical science in just a couple of years. So gastrointestinal hyperpermeability or leaky gut is a situation where the gut lining has become leaky and things that are supposed to stay in the digestive system have started leaking past that gut lining and they're entering the bloodstream, they're coming into the body. And this is never supposed to happen. And when this is happening for chronic, extended periods of time, it triggers the immune system, it creates a lot of dysfunctions. And again, depending on the individual and their genes and their gut microbiome, it can create all different types of conditions. Probably one of the most well understood is autoimmune conditions. So things like Sjogren's syndrome or autoimmune arthritis. These are conditions where the body looks to or appears to be attacking itself, but is very often a consequence of this gastrointestinal hyperpermeability, leaky gut phenomenon. So when these molecules of food that hasn't been digested correctly, or living or dead bacteria, or different things that are supposed to be in your gut and they're okay if they're in your gut, when these things leak into the bloodstream, not okay anymore. The body sees these things as pathogens or as inflammatory molecules or as toxins because they're not supposed to be there, and it will trigger an immune reaction to try to clean them out of the blood and out of the other tissues in the body. And when it does that, it activates the immune system, and in this activation process, the body can also attack its own tissues. And the way that this is approached now is with immunosuppressive medications, where we're basically turning the immune system off. But this has significant disadvantages because your immune system is very important. I personally believe that the body doesn't come with spare parts or redundant systems. And if you have a whole system based in immunity, you probably need it, and you don't want to be turning off if you don't need to. So if instead of just suppressing the immune system to control these autoimmune conditions, we could get to the root cause and reduce the intestinal permeability in the gut, we would see a reduction in these autoimmune expressions. And the thing that I love about this concept, this idea of leaky gut, is it's such a solutions-orientated idea. It provides us with so many different avenues and different mechanisms that we can influence the health of other health conditions. So I've just been talking about autoimmune problems here, but the list is almost endless. Anything that you could be experiencing in your body could potentially be connected to this leaky gut situation. This could look like skin problems. This could be sinus congestion. I've seen a lot of people that have imbalanced lipid levels like high cholesterol or non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And the common theme between all of these things that's connected to all of these individuals is this leaky gut presentation. I think it would be impossible to provide you with an exhaustive list of all of the different conditions that can be connected to this, because it's literally almost endless. It's almost everything. So if you're dealing with some digestive issues and you have a bunch of other problems as well, problems in your immune system, problems with your skin, problems in other areas of your body, the leaky gut phenomenon could be the missing piece that connects both of these situations. So it might be worth doing a little bit of research into this and trying to figure this out yourself. Because again, unfortunately, the gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you that. The third thing that a gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you is about the connection between what is going on in your gut and how this can affect your mood. Now, I personally see this most commonly with conditions like anxiety and depression, but it's also very true that what's going in your gut can affect all different areas of your mental, emotional, and cognitive health. So if you're somebody that struggles with something like ADHD or struggles to focus, or if you have any kind of sensory processing disorder like misophonia or dyslexia or dyspraxia or any of these things, these can all be connected to your gut. So what is the mechanism that the gut is causing or influencing these other problems in the body? First of all, we've got that leaky gut hypothesis, as we talked about in the last point. I'm sure that there's some of a contributing factor there in that situation. But what I really wanted to look at in this point and how the gut is connected to things like anxiety, depression, and ADHD is that the gut is where we have the majority of our neurotransmitters. So for example, almost every single person knows, and I'm sure you probably know this, if somebody has depression, one of the first things that modern medicine will do is give them an antidepressant. And usually antidepressant drugs work as selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So this is things like, in the UK, it's like Prozac, for example. There are a lot of other different types in different countries and different brands, but the way that they work is theorized to be the same. And again, I say theorized because it's not actually 100% science. So even something that is such a solid part of the mainstream medical model doesn't actually have a solid foundational backing. But anyway, that's a different discussion for another day. But the point is that selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors work on the serotonin molecule, in essence. Serotonin is the key to how these drugs actually work. And what a gastroenterologist probably won't tell you is that 80% of the serotonin in your body is where? Any guesses? Do you think it's your brain? Because it's not. It's your gut. 80% of serotonin in your body is in your gut. And very interestingly, this is because the actual primary function of serotonin is to regulate gastrointestinal motility. Now, doesn't that sound crazy? Because if you've ever heard of serotonin, I'm sure you've probably heard of it as the happy chemical, or the thing that people that have depression don't have enough of. But what I'm here to tell you is that serotonin's primary mechanism is actually regulating motility in your gut. So if you have any kind of motility problem, that could be constipation, that could be diarrhea, that could be any type of dysmotility like gastroparesis, there's a really good likelihood that serotonin could be out of balance. And if serotonin is out of balance in your gut, do you think serotonin is going to be in balance in your brain? Probably not. And this can lead to things like depression, to anxiety, to ADHD, to all of these different issues. And And this is just looking at one molecule and one mechanism of action. This is just looking at serotonin. But all the other neurotransmitters are directly influenced by the health of your gut. And more often than not, we actually have higher concentrations of neurotransmitters in our gut than we do in our brain. And one of the main reasons for this is that a lot of our neurotransmitters are produced by our beneficial bacteria. So if you are missing some of these beneficial bacteria that produce these neurotransmitters for you, you're going to be operating in a functional deficiency. If you're missing the important species that produce serotonin for you, and this is very well documented, this is established, this is science, this isn't like a theoretical thing. We know that our gut flora play an influential role in the conversion of tryptophan and 5-HTP, the precursor to serotonin, that turn them into serotonin. This process happens in our gut because it's a gut flora mediated process. And again, we're just looking at one molecule here. We're not looking at dopamine. We're not looking at GABA. We're not looking at all these other things that directly influence your mood. But the common theme between all of these things is the gut. The gut is so important when it comes to all of these different neurotransmitters. And your gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you any of that. The fourth thing on this list that your gastroenterologist probably won't tell you, and I'm saying probably because he might, there are more gastroenterologists that are becoming aware of this, is how much harm antibiotics do to the microbiome. So I think we've learned generally as a society that we kind of handed out antibiotics like candy and we really overdid it. Even providing antibiotics for things like colds and flus, which are viral-based infections, and antibiotics don't even help. But what we're beginning to see is that bacteria are becoming more resistant to antibiotics, and doctors are beginning to see this and they're prescribing antibiotics less. However, they still overprescribe them, and especially in the context of digestive issues. So very often you will see conditions, for example, SIBO. SIBO is a very common thing now. And whilst SIBO as a diagnosis is a little bit more helpful than IBS, which is what kind of existed before, because IBS is useless. If you out there watching this have had an IBS diagnosis, you know just how useless that diagnosis is. It basically means you have digestive problems. We don't know it. We have no idea why. We have no interventions that can help. Maybe you should exercise more. Maybe you should take an antidepressant. Maybe you should eat more fiber. That's all they're going to say. And it's useless. It's the most unhelpful diagnosis that exists. So SIBO is a step in the right direction because it's giving us a better idea of, look, maybe you have an imbalance of the bacteria in your intestine. And maybe if we try to influence this imbalance in your intestine, it might have an influence on your health and on your digestive health. So we're going in the right direction here. However, this is where they're going wrong. And this is what your gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you. And also, this is what probably your naturopaths, your functional medicine practitioners, and your alternative practitioners that are more in this alternative space, they're probably not going to tell you this. And again, it's not malicious. They just don't know. But they're going to see a condition like SIBO and they're going to hear the word overgrowth, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and they're going to throw antibiotics at you. Rifaximin, metronidazole, ciprofloxacin, all these different types of antibiotics, they're just going to throw them at you because they hear overgrowth and they think maybe this will provide a solution. But what I'm here to tell you is this is not the right approach. This is the wrong way to go about it. You see, what tends to be happening in any of these kinds of presentations is potentially we have an increased growth of one type of one specific organism. So for example, imagine in the gut, we've got lactobacillus, and lactobacillus is generally considered a probiotic organism. If we had a lactobacillus-based SIBO, you'd maybe see Lactobacillus acidophilus is 10 times higher than it's supposed to be. And this, of course, is a big problem. And the mainstream approach would be, or even the alternative approach would be to throw antibiotics at it. What ends up happening here is we kill the Lactobacillus acidophilus, but we also kill a whole bunch of other stuff. And we actually create even more of a gut dysbiosis presentation. When we stop taking the antibiotic, everything begins to grow back. And the Lactobacillus acidophilus is already the biggest organism there, and it just takes even more space and it causes even more problems. But what people don't tend to see is that although Lactobacillus acidophilus might be really high, usually all of the other Lactobacillus species are low or zero. So your Lactobacillus plantarum, your Lactobacillus casei, all of your other different Lactobacillus strains are low. So do you really have an overgrowth, or do you have a dysbiosis? Do you have an imbalance? And I can tell you firsthand that I had a SIBO presentation and I thought that the correct choice would be to go forward with antibiotics. So I ended up taking rifaximin. I ended up taking metronidazole. And not only did this not improve my gut health, not only did it not make my SIBO worse, it made it 10 times worse. And it also gave me histamine intolerance and mast cell activation syndrome. It worsened my chronic fatigue syndrome. I developed Sjogren's syndrome, an autoimmune condition. It made every single thing worse because although it makes sense in theory, in practice, it still shows a lack of understanding as to how the digestive system actually works and how the microbiome actually works. And unfortunately, your gastroenterologist is not going to tell you this, not because they don't want to, but because they simply don't know. So fifth and finally on this list, and this is going to be an interesting one. As I said earlier in the video, I have put a lot of research, a lot of hours into learning about this point in the last couple of months. else. So this fifth point that the gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you is that your gut is the seat of your immune system. So let me just elaborate on this so I can help you understand this very, very important concept that your gastroenterologist isn't going to tell you. We hear this, I suppose you'd even call it rhetoric, because we're just saying the same thing over and over again without any substance as to why it's true. But you hear this idea that 80% of your immune system is in your gut. But how? What are the mechanisms? How does it work? And this is true. You have a huge portion of your immune system in your gut. And I'm going to share with you now a couple of ways that your immune system actually does exist in your digestive system. So first of all, you've got non-immune functions that are actually a part of your immune system. This is a funny way to think about it, but these are mechanisms that function in the digestive system that are not strictly immune functions. However, they have an enormous influence on your immune system overall. So the first in this list, we have stomach acid. Your stomach acid is the first line of protection against any dietary pathogen whatsoever. Anything that goes in your mouth should be completely destroyed by stomach acid. Your acid is so strong that it can digest bones. It can corrode through metal. It is insanely powerful. If you didn't have this very strong mucus layer on the inside of the stomach, your acid would literally digest all the way through your body and leave a hole at the bottom. It is so strong that you could digest yourself, bones and everything. And the raw power of how could you not think that something so powerful would play a part in the function of your immune system? Just the sheer raw power of your stomach acid should tell you that it is a really big part of your immune system. So this is your first layer of protection against anything that enters your body through your mouth and through your digestive system. And as we work through your digestive system, you're going to see there's a lot more immune stuff happening in there. But if this layer is compromised, every single layer past this is also going to be compromised. And this is one reason that having strong stomach acid is so important. It's not just important for digestion. It's not just important for being able to extract nutrients from your food. It's also the first and the core pillar that your entire immune system is built upon. And again, your gastroenterologist is not going to tell you that. The second function that is not really considered a part of your immune system, but if you really start to look and you really try to understand, you'll see is a very important part of your immune system, is your bile. Your bile acts like soap. So think about, why do we use soap as humans? We use it to clean things. We use it to wash our hands if we have grease on our hands, but we also use it to kill bacteria, to kill viruses. That's why after you go to the toilet, you wash your hands. This is why before you prepare food, you wash your hands. And this ability that soap has to kill bacteria and to break apart viruses and these potentially pathogenic organisms is done in our body by bile. So inside of our small intestine, and it's a bit funny that it's called the small intestine because it's actually enormous. It's like 20 feet long. It's huge. Inside this small intestine, the primary cleaning mechanism, the primary way that we can kill things or that we can destroy pathogenic substances or organisms is our bile, because our bile works like soap and it literally rips pathogenic things apart. But more than this, your bile is how your body excretes all of your fat-soluble toxins. And if your body has accumulated a lot of toxicity, this can create a lot of different problems in your immune system. This can create histamine intolerance and mast cell activation syndrome. This can create autoimmune issues. This can create, honestly, a lot of different problems. And the bile is the primary mechanism that your body uses to remove these fat-soluble toxins. So not technically a part of the immune system, but as you can see through these two mechanisms of killing and of detoxification, clearly a very, very important part of immunity. And again, more than likely, your gastroenterologist is not going to tell you about that. And now we can look at the microbiome. The microbiome is so important in regulating your immune system. Your mucosal secretions, so things like secretory immunoglobulin A. This is one of the immunoglobulins that we produce in our digestive system to fight pathogens or to protect us against toxic substances. The secretion of this substance is regulated and modulated by your microbiome. So if you don't have the right gut bacteria, you're going to have too higher levels of this or too low levels of this. Your microbiome also produce all of these substances I talked about earlier, the serotonin, the GABA, all of these things that regulate not only digestive functions, but also your mood and your emotional state has an enormous influence on your immune system. If you look at people that get sick, they tend to be experiencing some kind of acute or chronic stress. And living with anxiety or depression or ADHD, you're in stress all of the time. You're either worrying about something, you're guilting yourself that you're not motivated to do something that you should be doing, or you're procrastinating it. Not to mention as well that having imbalances in all of these molecules, for example, histamine, creates physiological stress inside of your body. So when you think about stress, it's not just, I'm stressed about work, I'm stressed about kids, I'm stressed about deadlines. stress. It's also physiological stress. If you have nutritional deficiencies, if you're missing the right gut flora, if you have chemical imbalances, these all cause stress. And finally, and this is something I've not seen anyone else ever talk about on the whole internet, and I'm sure there probably is somebody talking about it, but I've never seen it, is that all of your lymphatic system drains into your gut. A very small portion actually goes through the kidneys. More than anything, your lymphatic fluid is draining into your digestive system. This is a crazy fact for you, but 80% of your lymph nodes are in your gut. That is absolutely insane. If you know what a lymph node is, you know how important lymphatic drainage is for your body being able to fight off infections, to be able to detoxify, to be able to function healthily and optimally. And all of your lymphatic fluid, the lymph in your legs, the lymph in your arms, in your neck, in your head, all of it is draining into your digestive system. And 80% of your lymph nodes are in your gut. And if you think the lymph is the seat of the immune system, this is where we produce a lot of our immune molecules as well. You then have to ask the question, okay, where is our lymph nodes? Where is our lymphatic system primarily situated? And it's situated right next to the digestive system. I believe the technical term for this is the GALT, G-A-L-T, gut adjacent lymphoid tissue. So if you bring all of these factors together, the stomach acid, the bile, the microbiome, the lymphatic fluid that drains into the digestive system, you're going to see that your gut is the seat of your immune system. And guess what? I doubt your gastroenterologist is going to tell you that either. So that is it for today's video. If you've watched all the way to the end, I would really love if you would leave me 3 doctor emojis in the comment below. Let me know you watched all the way to this point. And I genuinely hope on my end that I've given you more information in this relatively short video than in all of the doctor's visits that you've had up until this point. And I think it's worth saying at the end of the video, this isn't because gastroenterologists are bad. This isn't because I don't like mainstream medicine. It's just slow. It's sluggish. And if you're dealing with chronic health problems, chronic digestive issues now, you really want to know what's going on at the bleeding edge of science. You don't want to be following the medical model that's existed for the last 20 years because it's stagnant. It's all the same back there and there's no real change to be had. So I have no grudge with gastroenterologists. With all of these points, it's not because they're not telling you these things out of malice, it's because they genuinely don't know. But that's why people like me exist, to create YouTube videos and post them on the internet so that you can have access to the information that you need to make empowered health choices and achieve the health outcomes that you desire.